So essentially, not only by saying, I don't know, or I made a mistake, or we move into this place of truth that allows for trust, we're also increasing psychological safety, which allows for more of the emergence of truth, more creation, more imagination. These are not soft skills. These are distinct advantages in the age of AI because the machines are right behind us as partners, and they're prototyping and they're experimenting and they're doing probability weighting way faster than we can at this stage. We're learning so fast in this environment if we have truth, trust, psychological safety, lots of ideas, because we're able to experiment really quickly with closed feedback loops and our friends, the machines that are part of our team.
Welcome back to Team Lab Podcast. Today's guest is Jack Swift, a founder, CEO, board member, leadership advisor, and author of Level 7 Leadership, the blueprint for the human and machine era. Jack's work sits at the intersection of leadership, artificial intelligence, human performance, and organizational transformation. His central question is one every technology leader is now facing in real time. What happens to the human in the age of AI? For VP level leaders building and leading teams inside fast-moving technology companies, this question is no longer an abstract. AI is changing the operating environment for leadership. It is changing how quickly teams can create, how decisions get made, how organizations adapt, and what kind of human leadership is required when machines can increasingly provide speed, scale, memory, analysis, and pattern recognition. Jack calls this next level evolution, level 7 leadership, a way of leading in the human plus machine era, where leadership is no longer defined by control, but by coherence. In his view, the leaders who thrive in this next chapter will not simply be the ones who adopt more tools. They will be the ones who know how to shape decisions, culture, trust, adaptability, and collective intelligence in environments of accelerating change. Jack brings a rare combination of lived leadership experience to our conversation. He is a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point and a former U.S. Army Airborne Ranger, where his leadership foundation was forged in high-performance environment that demanded clarity, trust, and decisive action under pressure. His private sector career began at Janus Henderson. He later co-founded Pacific Current Group, a global multi-boutique asset manager that expanded to 19 firms across 4 continents and went public in 2014. Jack subsequently served as CEO and president of TIFIN. He served as CEO of Liminal Collective, working with leaders and organizations at the edge of human potential and exploring what becomes possible when people expand their capacity under complexity, pressure, and rapid change. Today, Jack serves on boards, advises companies, and works with founders, executives, and leadership teams navigating the shift into the human and machine era. In this conversation, we'll explore what AI now requires of leadership, how teams can create at speed with less friction, why the human role moves deeper rather than disappears, and what it means to build trust, coherence, and collective intelligence when humans and machines are increasingly working together. And without further ado, here is Jack Swift. Welcome, Jack Swift.
Good to be here. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. Angela, Cori.
Yeah, Angela and I have been huge admirers of your work, and we're so grateful for you to join us today.
Of course.
Great.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Being a self-described serial entrepreneur, founder, leadership advisor, author, focused on human potential and technology. You sit in such a unique position, having worked with so many leaders across industries. And in this moment where the pace of change coming at us feels like everything everywhere all at once, give us a sense of what the executives you're in front of right now are experiencing as they attempt to navigate through this.
Yeah, I think most of the people that I spend time with, C-suite executives, or I just call them top team executives, as well as founders and board members, they can sense that everything's shifting. The old ways of doing things are no longer working or working as well, but they don't really have names for it yet. So it's like the architecture or the foundation below them is moving like tectonic plates. Or another way to think about it is they're in a helicopter, and it's not just the forward motion. It's not linear. It's up, down, side to side, back and forth. And so the whole experience they're having at this rate of change is multi-directional, and it's exponential in its change rate. So we think about the fourth industrial revolution, the age of AI. It's not like the last one. The last industrial revolution was more linear. Get the assembly line. It moves in a straight line. It's very predictable. And from a probability weighted perspective, it can be built in, you could work in spreadsheets and you could work in mathematical formulas that are very simple. Those were not quadratic equations. Today, things are moving very differently. So that's destabilizing and unsettling for all of the executives that I'm working with. It's just different levels of unsettling. The folks that are probably most excited are those that are like, this is the best time in the world to create or co-create because I'm unconstrained, you can move at speed. And those tend to be founders that are building new technologies. The folks that are in bigger organizations that have had established practices and established systems in place for a long time, they're struggling because they don't even have words for what's happening. And, when I say everything is changing, the systems are changing, but the rate of change is changing. The way management works is changing. Leadership is changing. Leadership that used to be in the center is no longer in the center. It's migrating towards the edges. And leaders are being asked to not just provide direction with a deep knowing of what's going to happen. This is what we're going to do over the next 3 years. Here's a strategic plan. This is what we're going to do this quarter. Here are our objectives. Here are our KPIs. That's very linear. They're being asked to sense into what's emerging. They're being asked to maintain and develop connected systems of people and machines that are operating at speed towards a specific objective. And there's not much naming convention that helps bring them into coherence. And coherence or clarity is where I tend to land with the level 7 work, because I think that's the most important thing to bring forward. And so my work with these professionals, these executives, almost regardless of where they function, board level, top team level, individual contributor level, is bringing everything back to clarity. Because individual clarity is where coherence begins. And when the humans are clear or the humans are operating in their most human format, it allows the machines they're working with, AI, to be most useful and most supportive in the co-creation process. So that is what I'm seeing. And again, to frame it, it's all about clarity at the human level. And it's all about getting comfortable with sensing what's emerging where we don't have names for it. And we certainly don't know.
Are clarity and coherence interchangeable? Or is one of a definition of the other? How do you, because this word of coherence is very relevant to the work that we do with teams. And so I kind of want to go there and also mention that you mentioned level 7, which is your new book, the level 7 leadership, which is a blueprint of the machine and human era. So that it is, there's the book. Okay. Let's go into this framework, and maybe we can start with the coherence and then you can ask.
You went right for it. Angela, here we go. We're going right into it. Let's part. I appreciate you. Thank you. Most people aren't going so clearly into this parsing between clarity and coherence. I tend to use the word clarity when I'm describing what it feels like in an individual's system, in an individual person's operating system, their nervous system. And, that operating system includes the gut, the heart, the head, the whole system, because it feels clear when you're coherent. And when we get to the concept of coherence, we move into more of a scientific orientation, typically more of a physics orientation, where literally your energetic field is clear of distortions. It has coherence in its patterning from a physics perspective. And that coherence is providing clarity to a broader system. So for example, if an executive, a manager steps into a meeting, let's say it's, we're recording this on a Monday. Let's say it's a Monday meeting. We're going through OKRs and they're very clear in what the purpose of the meeting is, what the desired outcomes are of the meeting. They're very clear about roles in the meeting. Then that starts to provide a level of coherence for themselves before they get there. Maybe they don't have it. So they take a couple of deep breaths and they get centered right before they go in. But once they go in, now that they're a part of a broader system of people, and maybe there's distortion in that system. There's distortion in the field of, let's say there's 5 people in that meeting, in the field of 5 people. But if that individual is clear and coherent and they come into that field, then what happens is pretty quickly, actually, this happens in a few seconds. They make eye contact with people in the room and then they settle in a little bit. Everybody in the room starts to settle in a little bit, called rhythmic entrainment. And so it's what you see when you put 20 metronomes, metronomes from like piano class or whatever, or grandfather clocks in a room together. They might go into the room all on different rhythms, right? And they may have individual coherence, but when you put them in the room, it can be really noisy and messy, right? And after a few minutes together, maybe 20 minutes together, but it starts almost right away. It starts like in the first minute or two. You get coherence in the field, the whole system of grandfather clocks, metronomes for people. So the 5 people in the room, if there's coherence by one individual brings in coherence, the other 4 will come into coherence because that individual is creating this sort of anchor point for everybody to cohere around. Now there's more clarity in that. Then it works the other way around too. They come up with more chaos, been a tough Monday and not quite sure what to do. I'm a little confused. Everybody gets a little bit more chaotic. So that's why I advocate very strongly with level 7 for clarity and coherence. They're not quite synonymous, but they're very, very closely related. And thank you for asking the question.
Yeah. So are we saying that for that leader on a Monday is walking into that meeting with the other 5 people and coming from, a one-on-one with their leader where, maybe there's some budget problems, whatever the situation is that is altering that state? Are we saying that it's possible to get into coherence individually, and in doing so, you have a better outcome for the entire team to get into coherence? Is that what I hear?
That's what you hear. And that's true. And I think, but it starts with this first, and I think this is probably the single most important leadership characteristic today. I feel actually pretty strongly about that. It starts with self-awareness. So if a person is unclear as to their state or how they're showing up, are they angry? Are they resentful? Are they happy, hopeful, focused, whatever? There's not much chance they're going to come into coherence. But if they're self-aware and they go, I need to check myself. I'm still upset about a lot of traffic this morning before I went to the meeting. I need to let that go. I need to get clear on what I want for this meeting. Then they're bringing in that individual coherence and then they can bring to the whole team. But it starts with really being aware and then having the intention to get clear, bringing attention, ATT, tension to that intention, and then actioning that, saying, I am absolutely going to drop whatever I need to let go of before I start this meeting. I'm clear as to what we need to accomplish. I'm going to bring that with intention into the meeting. And then, things can emerge. The field can emerge. It's a lot more clear. It's really, really important now because machines are calling us out, right?
All right, let's go there.
Yeah, let's go. You want to go? Let's go there. What is it? What do you hear when I say that? What's exciting for you?
What is exciting is, which you also talk about in the book, that machines are pretty good at doing all the rational thinking and, that linear thinking, which pushes humans now in this era to get more on the human side. How can these teams be more human? They are human already. So what do you mean?
Well, the first thing I was describing is the concept of machines. They are asking humans for more clarity because it's very difficult if you're a machine. And when I talk about machines, I'm talking about, generally speaking, technology. AI is included in that. But they operate with such precision, scale, and speed that they can kind of very quickly take anything that the human is inputting and they can create from that. And so if the human's inputting something that's very confusing, it just creates more confusion. So whatever the leader brings, that's what the AI is going to amplify. And so I think it's imperative that the human is human and clear. And we used to be able to get away with not being that clear because we were just in this constant state of reaction. And this has just been the way we've done things for a really long time, really going back to probably the 1930s, 40s. And as big manufacturing continued to emerge, we would just sort of use the pace the machines were bringing, in this case, machines in assembly line, to operate from a more frenetic place or a more reactive place. So we would just go fast and create a lot of confusion, but nobody really knew what we were doing. So it's okay as long as we get the product out at the end of the week, we'll just go faster. And you want to see my PowerPoint and I put a bunch of stuff in it, a bunch of information. You're not going to really know what's going on. Well, machines will cut through that really fast. Be like, nope, you didn't get to the end result. So now we get to what, because you said, yeah, humans are already human. Like, what does being human mean? Like, how can I be more human? Lots of ways to be more human. But we're going to focus on a couple of key ways when I say that, what I mean. So we already covered this concept of in the human machine team, which we're all part of human machine teams now, right? We have, if nothing else, we have a phone in our pocket that on average Americans touch 157 times a day. And as Americans, we're also the rest of the world a little bit less, but as Americans, we're interacting with AI about 80 times a day. So we're already kind of there. And I've already touched on this concept of what is a machine doing? It's doing knowledge, it holds a lot of knowledge, precision, scale, speed. It's really what the machine's efficiency at a high level. Now the human, how can the human be more human? Well, humans are the only species that I'm aware of that are able to imagine an infinite number of potential futures and bring them into reality. So we're amazing Imagineers. We have great imagination. And not only are we Imagineers, but we're creators. So we're great at creativity. And broadly speaking, we think about somebody like Leonardo da Vinci during the last Renaissance period, because I believe we're in the next Renaissance period. He was creating across many different mediums, many different ways of thinking. That's a very human thing to do. We, the folks that are listening to this and all of us here that are having this conversation, we're very aware at how machines, when pointed at something very specifically, they're very good at delivering precision. If I ask for a song recommendation on Spotify, given the infinite number of songs that are available, I'll get some pretty good recommendations with those algos. They're very good at precision. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to broadly thinking about creation and extrapolating and David Epstein wrote a good book on this called Range, extrapolating from knowledge base in one area to a different space, humans are really good at that. So imagination, creativity, these are very, very human characteristics. And machines they create in a very linear format. We create from a very expanded format. That's why humans and machines in a team are capable of beating a machine-only chess player. Machine to machine, kind of interesting. Human to machine, not that interesting because the machine can beat the human. When you have a team of machine and a human against another machine, the human and machine win because they're very unpredictable because humans can create all kinds of crazy ways to do things. It's amazing. And so some other characteristics are adaptability, resilience, performance under pressure. These are all things that humans do really, really well. We've been doing it for a while. And so I think it's important that we step into these things and realize it's an amazing time to create. It's an amazing time to be a co-creator because we can imagine almost anything and bring it into reality very quickly because we have these partners in AI that can help us do that. So that's the way I think about the human machine team and the best of the human: imagination, creativity, adaptability, and the best of the machine: precision, scale, speed. So essentially, not only by saying, I don't know, or I made a mistake, or we move into this place of truth that allows for trust, we're also increasing psychological safety, which allows for more of the emergence of truth, more creation, more imagination. These are not soft skills. These are distinct advantages in the age of AI because the machines are right behind us as partners, and they're prototyping and they're experimenting and they're doing probability weighting way faster than we can. At this stage. So we're learning so fast in this environment. If we have truth, trust, psychological safety, lots of ideas, because we're able to experiment really quickly with closed feedback loops and our friends, the machines that are part of our team.
It's interesting when you say the humans are making decisions, they're getting clear on their strategy, the future, whatever that is. But we do see a lot of conflict when you've got multiple leadership teams or silos inputting into the machine what their interpretation is of that plan or the strategy. Everyone's got a different idea of the what that we're working on. If everyone's also have their fingers in the machine world giving it instruction.
Yeah, and it could be very confusing. To your point. And I think clarity on the what is the most important thing that a leader can bring today. Not the how, the what. And if it's not clear, my recommendation or my advice when I'm working with C-suite executives or executives generally speaking in a coaching capacity or an advisory capacity is if we're not clear with something that's very big, make it smaller and smaller and smaller until you're clear. So smaller objectives, shorter timelines, smaller teams of people. And then once you're really clear and operating from a very clear what. So for example, we're going to improve the product, the one feature by the end of the week. How many people are involved? 3. Can we do it? Yes. And we're clear on the what, not the how, because the other people involved in the process, to your point, Cori, they do the how. And they do the how based on where they have expertise, UI, UX, back end, whatever it is. The how needs to emerge on its own because leadership has shifted. It used to be very centralized. So your chief product officer would say, I have the what. And I'm going to tell you how to do it. And it's not that way anymore because everybody involved in the process has access to AI. And so if they have the capability to query, to get data back, and then to action that data, they have the ability to impact the outcome. And this is where it can be very confusing if the what is not really, really clear because it's inevitable that everybody has this capability set today. It doesn't matter whether it's Copilot or Claude or whatever they have access to. So first distilling down to very short objectives, smaller teams, getting really clear on the what at that point. And then from that place, building up, if you have a team of 3 and then going to a team of 6, staying very clear on the what as you expand a little bit more to an objective that's maybe a little more ambiguous. And then keep doing that with very short feedback loops so that we're always learning. And then as the feedback loops come back and they say, you were wrong, you made a mistake, you go, of course, we're just learning. That's the beginning. Those are the beginning steps of moving from these very small objectives to bigger objectives and maintaining clarity on the what. Because the feedback loops will give you signal in this broader field of noise, but it has to be from a place of psychological safety where everybody can say, oh, I hear the signal of the what. I hear the signal of the what more clearly as we expand in what we're trying to accomplish versus we started with something small, we made a mistake or somebody was wrong and now I can't hear it anymore because there's so much shame being cast back and forth and guilt and somebody's an idiot and they don't understand what's going on. They're not bright enough. That kills the whole process. You have to start again, back down very small.
Yeah.
What's the what? How do we do it? And then build up. And the clarity at this most senior level needs to be very, very strong, but also flexible. So that means shorter timelines. So again, I said this earlier in the discussion, but we don't know. The board doesn't know. The CEO doesn't know. The CPO doesn't know. None of them know. Because the rate of change is too fast. Now they can sense what's likely to emerge, and getting clear on sensing the what is really, really important that they communicate that, and then watching the how and then adjusting to the what, to what's emerging.
Can you help us understand that sensing? Because to me, that is a human quality, but it does not come from my formation in leadership development in my corporate life. How do you bring the leaders that you consult with or that you coach to nurture this quality that we have as humans and sense their environment?
Yeah, it's not something that's taught in school, right? Not today anyway. I think it was taught a couple thousand years ago. I think when Plato and Aristotle were doing a lot more sensing and encouraging to sense, and they were telling people the way things were. For me, this goes back to my military experience and in the special operations community. And if you're familiar with the term murmuration, that this is a good concept for this. But if you're not, just think of a school of fish or a flock of birds. When they move, and this could be a technology organization, this could be any organization of people too. But when they move quickly and all in synchronous format, in a coherent format, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing that by sensing not the whole field of birds or fish, but just the one next to them. And that's the beginning of sensing. So how do birds tie back to the special operations community? It doesn't make any sense. Well, if you watch shows and you watch, the SEAL teams or Delta Force, they move without any words, very quietly as one unit. Very good. We're excited tonight about the World Cup, right? Same thing with good soccer/football teams. They move without words in a coherent format because they're all sensing. So sport is a good place for that because sport is a place, and so is a special operations community, where somatic sensing, or using your whole body to sense what's emerging, is really important. It could be the most important skill. In the special operations community, sensing where somebody is can keep you from getting killed on the soccer field, football field. It can keep you from missing a goal or scoring a goal. It's really, really important. So how do we bring that back to the executive? It's asking her, saying, hey, are you feeling like we're going to be able to get this objective? We're going to be able to push to production by next Tuesday. Do you feel that's possible? And she says, well, we've always done it Tuesday. No, that's not the question, because she's moved to her head now. You're not asking for her to think. You're saying, do you feel that we'll be able to get this done by next Tuesday? And then what does it feel like to say we really need to get it done by Thursday? How does that feel? Oh, we've never been able to do it that fast. I don't care about what's happened in the past. How does it feel to talk about Thursday? It brings up a lot of anxiety. If I prefer to be honest with you, Jack, it brings up a lot of anxiety. Great. Okay. So what would it take for us to be able to do it by Thursday to make you, well, I need more team members. I need to get more. Okay. So now we're sensing what's possible. Could it happen by Thursday? Sure. More resources is what I need. I feel that it's possible. Now we're shifting belief systems. I'm feeling into my system. I'm feeling my whole body either get tense or relaxed based on, shifting resources. Now we're sensing. And so we've all sensed as executives what it feels like to go into a meeting where everybody is super tense because we've blown the quarter, or we've missed ROI targets, or our OKR score is super low. And that's a very contracted feeling. We've all sensed how good it feels to be able to have blown through a quarterly target. We know what that feels like too. So this is the beginning of the discussion. The sport analogy is helpful because most people have touched into sport in one way or another. And they've felt those feelings of being in a group and operating from that place. And if people still can't connect in those ways, then, oftentimes for me, we just go into nature. And I'm like, how does your system feel? How did it feel we're in the office building? How does it feel now we're outside with the trees? And they go, I feel more relaxed. Great. You're sensing. Did you know you're going to feel relaxed when you stepped outside? No, I didn't know that. Okay, but you're sensing more relaxed. Yeah, I feel more relaxed. Now, biomechanically, what's happened is their cortisol levels have dropped by 20%. So of course they feel more relaxed. We know this from the scientific perspective. This isn't some woo-woo stuff that we're talking about here. This is all very backable from a scientific perspective. It's just the practice of sensing versus intellectual plane or mental plane of knowing, which is too slow now, is really, really important. Sensing is not too slow. Sensing is what the human body was designed for. We did for, hundreds of thousands of years. The last 50, 100 years, we've been able to build on spreadsheets. Things have been more predictable because we were in the last industrial, very linear revolution. Now it's a different multi-vector, exponential rate of change. We have to sense again and let the machines do the linear.
One note there, in systemic team coaching, the sensing is, sensing individuals for the team, where the sentiment of the individual is the sentiment of the system in which the individual operates. So, there's an analogy there of sensing as scale for these leaders that can sense the state of the team.
It's important to remember you can do this like real time too. You can do it very quickly in a meeting. I talk about this in the Level 7 book about how to do this, in a meeting, sensing into a meeting. When you bring up something like, this is the learning from last week. Does everybody in the room hold their breath? Maybe you're sensing that that's not the right direction. Does everybody kind of exhale and go, oh, that makes sense? Sensing. Sense. So, you can do it real time. And if people are more, I'm an engineer by training, right? So if they're more structurally oriented, we can use something like the after action review format. And so anytime, we're experimenting with a different feature, the product or a new market, go to market strategy, after action review is really simple. And it's, what did we set out to do? What do we expect to happen? What happened? And what do we learn? And through that very simple process, 3-step process, you're sensing into what you might do differently next time. And then you're moving forward. I think that we haven't talked about something that I think it's incredibly important that we're all around, but we haven't talked about it, which is trust.
Yes.
Because it's very difficult to sense if you're not in a trusting environment. It's also very difficult to move at speed if you don't have trust on your team. Do you work with this concept with your
We
teams?
do. We talk a lot about psychological safety. And building trust with teams. That's probably one of the most common things that we're asked, questions that we're asked, how to build trust with the team. And you have a very specific way of, in your level 7 framework of building trust with the team and moving the team from fear to alignment, which if you don't have trust, that doesn't happen. And also wanted to touch upon you kind of mention it in there, the saying, I don't know, or I made a mistake as ways to build trust, because that is probably, and especially for senior leaders, for C-level leaders, that is the hardest thing to say. I don't know, or I made a mistake, because that's what they're paid for. And that's why they got those promotions. Let's go there for the leader, and then for the team. How do you build that psychological safety, and how do you move teams from, I know there's a lot in these questions, from fear to alignment and to success?
Yeah, I think this is, I think it's page 143 of the book.
You remember the pages of your book?
Because if people ask me, they'll say, I don't have time to read the whole book. What should I focus on? They just read page 143. That's it. That's the
there
most
you go,
important
listeners. Go to page 143.
143. I mean, listeners can also go and play with the agentic, AI capability that's built on the book's information if they go to l7leadership.com. Interact with her. L7 is her name, and she knows everything in the book. And she also is learning every day with interactions with, folks, that leaders that come and use her for different things, to build templates for their team, to understand different ways of thinking, to bring coherence into a team, to come up with practices to create trust with their team. She probably has, 15 new ways to do that I'm unaware of, unless I go ask her about that. She's learned over the last few weeks.
I actually went in there, and I haven't asked what questions I should ask you. But we're going to go on that next.
I'm not sure that's fair.
I did. Well, who better than L7 knows Jack Swift?
Yeah, she knows a lot. She knows a lot, but that's okay. Cool. Well, I'm gonna take a really long time to answer this question so I can avoid the tough ones. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I think it is. I'm pretty sure it's page 143. To your point, saying I don't know or I made a mistake is incredibly impactful for a team, because the reason is it's aligned with truth. That's really the key piece. And, we all know that it feels a lot more open and fluid when people are being authentic, when they're not hiding behind masks or titles. It's so much more enjoyable to be around those people, including leaders. And so when somebody has legitimately, earnestly made a mistake as a leader, and they say it, everybody's system in the room just relaxes, because they're like, yeah, I've made mistakes too. And I'm glad to see that, Cori is human. I'm glad to pick on you, Cori, but that you've made a mistake, because I made a mistake. And now we're in a very different place. It's the psychological safety has gone way up, because it's okay to make a mistake. And so now we're building from this place of trust. And it's not just a place of trust, it's a place of trust aligned with truth. And so that's where the real power is in building at speed in the age of AI, because trust is in some ways, it's a prerequisite for speed. And it is synonymous in some ways with speed, with companies that are going to be very successful in this period of change. So, and to say, I don't know is also true. And, in the past, things moved slowly enough that an executive could do a lot of probability weighting. And by the way, this is all brain-based work, because the brain is a probability machine. It's very good at taking things that happened in the past, or things it learned at school, or learned from modeling with its parents or other people that it was impacted by, and forecasting for the future. That is really what the brain does. And so in the past, things were moving slowly enough that the brain had time to probability weight certain outcomes. And then, we used spreadsheets and Monte Carlo simulation and a bunch of different things to increase the probability or the accuracy of that probability weighting. It doesn't work anymore. That's too slow. So if an executive says, I know we're going to do this in the next year, it's just not aligned with truth. They should say, I don't know, but I feel. Now we're moving out of the brain into the body. And we all know that feeling in our gut we get when there's a child that needs something, or a friend that's about to call and the phone rings. We all know that feeling, that instinct that you have. So it's from that place of feeling that the executive that says, I don't know, but I feel like this quarter we can do X. I feel like by the end of the year, we're really going to be able to do Y. There's a certain amount of foundational truth there that really accelerates trust with the whole team. And now we get into sort of Jeremy Utley's work, right? With
The flow.
idea flow, right? Yeah. So why do some companies have great ideas? Because they have a lot of ideas. Why do companies have a lot of ideas? Because they allow their people to share their ideas without fear. And so essentially, not only by saying, I don't know, or I made a mistake, or we move into this place of truth that allows for trust, we're also increasing psychological safety, which allows for more of the emergence of truth, more creation, more imagination. These are not soft skills. These are distinct advantages in the age of AI because the machines are right behind us as partners, and they're prototyping and they're experimenting and they're doing probability weighting way faster than we can at this stage. So we're learning so fast in this environment if we have truth, trust, psychological safety, lots of ideas, because we're able to experiment really quickly with closed feedback loops and our friends, the machines that are part of our team. So that's what I see as far as creating it at a deeper level. I mean, there's lots of ways that I like to do this with my teams or people that I'm working with. But that's the beginning. And then I think you can continue to extend it by, exercises that help people just to relate to other humans in a very somatic way or using their bodies. So one of the things that I'll do, for example, is back to the conversation we had earlier about schools of fish or flocks of birds and this concept of murmuration is we'll go out and do a murmuration walk where I'll say, walk side by side with somebody on the team. And for the next 10 minutes, we're not going to say anything. And let's just observe what happens. And after 5 or 10 minutes, everybody's walking in lockstep. They're kind of in this rhythm together. Like, oh, that's interesting. And now we're operating from this like sense of trust that's way deeper than just the words we've spoken about the mistake we've made. And we start to see ourselves differently in the team and the work we're doing together.
Yeah. And we always love to provide tools and ideas for leaders on this podcast. We always have amazing guests who have great ideas and tips and detailed steps to take their teams through these exercises. And we trust that people are doing them and they're having some impact, right? However, sometimes you need someone like you to come in from the outside. You're kind of the magic sauce sometimes because I don't see HR teams or people programs. I don't see this sort of sensing skill coming in at that level yet for larger organizations and smaller ones. What do you say to the idea that you need to have someone from the outside coming into the system to be able to have an impact at this more human level, this sensing level?
It works with my marriage. I mean, when my wife and I go to a therapist and the therapist has an opinion about something we should do differently, then that usually goes better than me having that opinion. Or my wife having the opinion. So I think you can replicate that very directly into work. And the I don't see myself as an academic. I'm not coming into this conversation or anything that I'm sharing with the audience from the perspective of, having worked at Harvard or Stanford for a long time and compiled a bunch of data that I think will work in the real world. I live in the real world. I've been building companies for a really long time, 2 decades. And so I'm coming to you as an observer of what I've seen work and what I think is necessary in the age of AI for leaders and a different way to operate in the business world. So yeah, I think it's important that teams listen to outsiders, especially those that have experience and broad experience, because it's probably pretty unusual to have somebody who is a West Point trained engineer on a podcast talking about sensing into things and murmuration and walking side by side and building trust and psychological safety. I mean, shouldn't I be here just talking about how we drive for performance and how teams need to get in line and do what we say, and that we need to take control of our teams and drive towards a specific objective? I mean, that's what I should be doing if I followed what I was taught at West Point. The reason I don't do that is because I'm observing real time, working with founders. And some of these companies, we go really, really fast. Like I worked with a company, Vantage Discovery, last year, 12 months into it, because we were moving with coherence. We were moving with trust. We had a great exit to Shopify. Didn't take 2 years. Somebody who had a more rigid framework might have said, oh, this is going to take at least 36 months for you to do this. No, we moved fluidly. We got it done in 12 months. We had a great exit. And so I think I'm observing that the old ways of control orientation and in dictating how things should be done from a place of, I know how to do this, listen to me because I have experience, doesn't work. Just doesn't work. And I give a nod of appreciation and to things like servant leadership, because I think servant leadership's amazing. You care about your team. There's books like Leaders Eat Last, which is a great concept. And I really believe that was a great way of doing things. Too slow. If I walk around with all my teams and I have a discussion with them and I say, well, how do you think we should do these things differently? And I'm seeking to build relationship and build trust. If I don't action that right away, it's gone. Because it doesn't even, the things we were discussing probably don't even matter in a week because the rate of change is so fast. We see, huge shifts. And so while I say, hey, it's great to build relationship and listen to your team, you got to go a lot faster than that. So this is where we get to the only thing that I know that I'm observing is fast enough. And we see this all the time in nature. Nature moves actually really quickly, and how it adapts is sensing into, these necessary shifts when you can't know because it's too fast. It's too fast. So hopefully that's helpful. And I do think it's helpful to hear it from somebody else. And I try to bring these things through in a way that's actionable, that people can go do it. Like you can go take a walk with 6 people on your team and notice how you're operating together. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you're like really incoherent. Why is that? And how can we get better at moving, together more fluidly, trusting each other? But yeah, again, I'm just coming at it as an observer with what's working. And I'm very fortunate to work and know and spend time with some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the technology space and the folks that work with providing those folks with talent. And I did a field session I call Level 7 field session. I love doing these. We spend a day and sometimes up to 6 days. 6 days would be like a full-on vision quest from a Native American perspective. Just water, sitting in nature for 6 days, comes through. But I was working with a couple of executives from one of the largest executive recruiting firms in the world, doing a 1.5 day field session like a week and a half ago. And I'm asking them, I'm both observing what's working for them and helping them to get more clear. And I'm asking them, what is it you feel is the most important thing to hire for right now? And they're like adaptability, self-awareness, the ability to correct, learn quickly. YouTube University, learn quickly. I'm like, yeah, but what about, these resumes that have all these amazing universities and, I built this company and I built this company. And they're like, different world. That's stuff that happened 10 years ago. Think about it. This is a pre-OpenAI world. It was a pre-generative AI world. So, what happened before 2022, it's very different today. Same could be said for 2008 when the iPhone came out. Things changed a lot. Mobile became a lot more important.
The other thing that I hear there, Jack, letting go of identity of who you think you are. Teams that are lagging behind or the leaders that are lagging behind because either as a culture or as an identification that attached to what brought them there, what made them who they are. And that's, I think, the biggest divide that I see these days. What do you think?
Couldn't agree with you more. If I'll just put myself into the seat. If I'm attached to the CEO title and I'm no longer the CEO, I've been CEO a bunch of times. What does that mean for me? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What matters is, am I self-aware enough to see where I have things that are really energizing for me and pursue those and have the courage to pursue those without the title? That matters. Do I have the self-awareness to see what's draining for me so I don't get burned out or deal with substance abuse issues? See this all the time with founders and executives right now because they're like, I don't know who I am anymore because I'm holding on to that title. So this would be holding on to the CEO title for me. I let go of the title of CEO. And now what? I don't really know. I'm kind of scared, but just call it right relationship with ego. Or like, thank you, ego. Thank you for taking such good care of me all of my life. You protected me and kept me from doing stupid things like sleeping all day instead of going to work. I really appreciate it. So you've motivated me to get to work and you've given me these titles and I really appreciate that because it helped me so much to get to this point. Now let's have a discussion. You're really good at protecting me and I deeply appreciate that, but I've got to let you go when it comes to imagining new things because when I imagine something new, imagination, creativity, adaptability, ego get nervous. So how do we come into the right relationship? And I think having that discussion with your ego is the beginning of that. And this is what I mean by self-awareness. So if you can get to a discussion with your ego and the ego says, okay, I gotcha. I can deal with it if you want to lean into a little bit of instinct and I'll just see what happens. My experience has been with practice, the ego starts to relax. It starts to calm down a little bit because it starts to see this, intuition, instinct thing works pretty well. And now you're not fighting with your ego or trying to feed your ego. I need more title, more money, bigger house, more vacations. Like those are all things the ego wants. Why does the ego want those things? Because they make you feel safe, secure, predictable, and the brain loves predictability, right? That saying to my ego, I understand that's who you are, but you're not me, and it's this concept of I'm not my emotions, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my ego. I'm different than all of that. I have another book that I'm working on that's called Frequency Finding You, and it's for all those people, all those executives out there. I was and still am on this path that have found themselves lost in this ambiguity. So if I'm not my title, ego says is important, and I'm not my income, ego says that's important. What am I? We're getting into what's the reality you create? What's the future you create through being present in the present moment and owning how you feel in that present moment, and through owning that feeling, creating your future. That's the quantum piece, but it starts with self-awareness. And Angela, to your point, letting go of the ego construct, letting go of the labels and all the things so that you can be comfortable with yourself and learn who you really are.
Cori and I talk about evolving from the ego to eco, which is part of the systemic thinking and the systemic team coaching. Egos, even at team level, are great. Brought the team to what the team was there for, was created to do. And you connect the team with the rest of the ecosystem of the system. And that's where that shift goes from these silos, my team, to us as an organization, as a company.
Yeah. And it really does. It sounds like it's such, like you've said this before, it's an inside job, right? It has to start somewhere within the self-reflection of the leader. It could even be someone on the team who brings this idea forward and gets others in a ripple effect or a waterfall, right? To sort of get others to think about. And you do this well with your clients, Jack, and in asking those questions, even in a work environment, because sometimes people are like, what? We're talking about feelings at work? Okay. But, we're in a moment where this is clearly a road that we need to start taking to be around, so we won't go extinct, I think, as humans and as businesses.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I think about when I hear you say that, Cori, is where we started the conversation. Somebody's got to start it. That's the clarity, and then they can create coherence, and everybody else can become more coherent. And now we're in a coherent team, and then we can start to touch into things that are a little more complicated, like ego, team ego. Where is the ego for the team? Oh, it's with whether or not we get the feature added by the end of the week. Well, shouldn't it be with the impact we have to the product for the client, or should it be with the client experience? Where is the ego? Where is purpose in all this? These are things that are an important part of it. But I discourage anybody that I work with from getting into this sort of negative cycle. I used to be the best coder on the team. I know React, I know Python better than anybody else. And now machines do that. So it's all over. And I just say, no, let's take it from the perspective of how good can it get? How good can it be? What are you uniquely capable of imagining or creating?
I am cognizant of time, and I went on L7, and I have a series of questions, and I think this one will be good for ending this episode. I love that is a she. Imagine it's 2035. A young leader tells you that your work change the way they lead. What do you hope they say they learned from you?
I hope that they say that they learned to hold the outcome lightly, not to hold too tightly on what they think is the right outcome. That there's no such thing as right and wrong. Really, there's only learning. Winning and learning. There's no losing. And so whatever that outcome is, it's valuable. And so it's letting go of the concept of right and wrong that sets us into a space of freedom to truly create.
And from a remarkable learner of Earth School, Jack Swift, thank you so much for being with us. Other than your website, where can people find more about you? How can they connect with you?
Yes, they can find more about me at jackcswift.com. Also L7, the letter L and 7, leadership.com. And I love working with executives and teams, especially in nature. And so I love doing field sessions with people where we get into more immersive experiences and do experiential learning. So people that feel aligned with that, I'm really excited to connect with. They can also find out more about Sangha, which is one of the communities I co-founded at sangha.org.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Cori. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
What a powerful conversation with Jack. Leading alongside AI invites us to sharpen our distinct human capabilities, which means deepening our self-awareness, cultivating trust, and bringing genuine clarity into how we show up with our teams. Now, before your next team meeting, try this. Check in on your own clarity, hold the outcome lightly, and see what happens when you engage with an intention of expanding coherence to the rest of your colleagues. Let us know how it goes. Now, if you want to dig deeper into Jack's work, check out Level 7 Leadership, or even test out the AI agent trained on his framework at l7leadership.com. You can also find all the resources he mentions in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in to Team Lab. Until next time, keep experimenting, keep sensing, and take care of your teams.